Hi, everyone. Today we're going to look at the language of change and continuity. In high school, we work on continuity and change. In fact, in a different video, we specifically analyze about what stayed the same and what changed in regard to history and how we can use our own personal lives to analyze change and continuity. Okay. Now, when we write about change and continuity, there's specific language that's used. In fact, there's a language and continuity and change. I wouldn't necessarily call it a tool, but it is in there, and it has all different language and sentence starters that we can use to help us when we write about continuity and change. Okay, so let's break this down. How can we do this? I'm going to take it box by box. Okay, we're going to first look at the adjectives and adverbs, the nouns, change of continuity, then the verbs, and then the sentence starters. We're kind of taking the tool and taking it apart to see how it would work for us, okay? So that first box, okay, which says continuity and change, adjectives and adverbs. Remember, those are words that describe an adjective describes a noun, and adverb describes a verb. Let's take this apart. I see a whole list, I get overwhelmed. Or I know that there's some students who, when they see a list, they just have that one go-to word and that's all they use. And you don't want to keep using the same word over and over because, first of all, you're not supposed to do that. Second of all, it frustrates the grader. And lastly, you want to sound like you have a very sophisticated, advanced vocabulary. Oops, I just used two adjectives. You're not supposed to do that. And so here's what I suggest. Okay, when you see the tool and you see the list, as in like that big list going back here, don't freak, okay? I would take certain words that are like my go-to words and I would use them and I would kind of rotate between them. Now, sometimes it doesn't make sense. And sometimes when you're given a list of words like this, you may not know what they mean, okay? So that's where dictionary.com comes in, or a dictionary on your phone. I have one of those. Or if you're in person in class, a dictionary. I have them in my classroom. But if you're specifically looking at continuity, right? Those words, if you notice, I highlighted some of them. I highlighted continued, continuously, like continuity, persistent. That's like when something always stays the same, and then throughout, that it stayed the same. But don't do that like favorite history mistake people do. What am I talking about? This one, that throughout history. What do I mean throughout history? Okay, I mean that people love to go starting their essay throughout history. Let me tell you what happens when you start an essay with throughout history. You make your grader frustrated. You don't want to frustrate your grader or your teacher. Okay, so you can say it once inside your essay. I'm going to talk about how to start later on. Then there's words that show change. Now, sometimes change can be slow, sometimes it can be quick. So if you notice, I picked out some change words here, but what I took the regular highlighter to abrupt, which means like very sudden, rapid, which means quickly, or transformative means something completely changing. I made those purple, but I did gradual in a different color because I wanted to show you that gradual is change over time. The other words they have like explosive, that's also pretty quick or has a very big effect. So again, I chose to put gradual in pink over here just to remind you that it's slow and the other ones seem to be a little faster. Okay, that is the descriptor words for change. Okay, now the nouns. How do you actually describe the way the change happens? There's a whole list with continuity and change. Which words, again, you can look them up online. You can look them up in a dictionary, look them up on your phone. But which words do I think we should stick with here? Okay, continuity means it always stays the same. So like in science, you may have heard the word constant, staying the same. Continuation, how did this continue? How did this stay the same? How did this always remain that way? Okay. Negligible difference, meaning you could see that there was a drop, but it kind of stayed the same. And then stability, that it remained the same. Now, the one reason I'm not talking about consistent is for some reason they put it into the verbs too. Remember, guys, consistent is a noun, consistently is something else. Okay. Now, for change, break a difference with the past, right? Developed, something grew out of the past. Emergent, something came out. Reason, but remember, reason for the change. You're not just writing reason for, and you're going to have to say what the change was. And by the way, I was thinking if I should make break pink because it's like a showing there's a difference, but then I'm like, hey, it's a change word. Hello, of course it's going to be there. It's basically the same as everything else. Now, the verbs show that it actually happened. Again, this list, let's see what I picked out. Okay. So we have connected, meaning here shows how it's with something from earlier. Continued, hey, it's continuity. Maintained, meaning you're keeping it the way it was. Remain, it's staying the same. Now change to alter, like from the Declaration of Independence, alter or abolish. They always love to pick out those words to make the change. Disrupt, like when you're disrupted, that's like something got stopped. Okay. Emerged, it came out. Evolved, it slowly changed. Now ruptured is kind of like something broke and came apart. So that's probably closer to disrupt, and I made it pink because it tends to be also much quicker, while the other things tend to be a little slower. Although disrupt and alter, you can make an argument, are faster change words. You may want to look up the definition and see how to actually use them. Guys, remember, I'm suggesting all these words, but you want to make sure you use them properly. When you come into the organizer, you come to the change of continuity tool, when you say what stays the same and what endured or continued, you're going to use the language from here. You're going to use this descriptive language. Now remember how you're going to use it. When you talk about what's important about it, what's significant, right? Who benefited from change, who benefited from continuity. Again, that's how you're going to do it. Now, how you're going to write it, there's this whole list of suggestions you can use. Personally, I think, or at least when I was writing, I would stick with the second to last one, but I would add something onto it. I'm going to show you in a minute. And the even though teachers like, because you show like one side, then the other side. So I would also stick to the even though. But I told you I'm going to change it a little bit. What do I mean? Going back now to my example, even though my involvement in swimming showed changes in my physical activity at, I would say, day camp, by becoming a lifeguard and my teaching lifeguard continued to happen or continued. Guys, when you have a sentence starter, you're not stuck with those words. Okay, you can kind of work with the words, you can change them up, but these are examples. Like it's the same thing, and they have it from here. During, you see that one? It's the second to last one. During the period, and you have the date, the end date. This remained the same. This stayed the same. This changed, this stayed the same. But I changed up that sentence starter a little bit because if you go back here, during whatever to whatever, something changed, but this remained the same because your teacher's going to want you to explain it. Now, where do you get that information from? If you go to the change of continuity tool, at the beginning when you write, you wrote down the period, when something started, when it ended. You have the focus question, you have the cause, where, what. That's how you're going to explain it, and that's how you're going to have all that information to fill this in. So now going all the way back to an example, which you may have looked at the other clip. What changed? What remained the same? Okay, you're thinking about your life when you went from here to here. This is what changed, but this remained the same because you're going to use this language. You may want to use the sentence starters. You may want to use the specific language that they give you. But remember, this is meant to help you. So pick out what you need, look up the words you don't know, and you can use other words, you can use other sentence starters. Just remember to make sure that you know what the word means when you use it. Okay? I hope that helped you explain what has stayed the same, what has remained. So when you speak about change and continuity and use the language, you use the language in a way that you're comfortable with and makes sense to you and your teacher.